Good afternoon, everybody. It is wonderful to be in beautiful Adams Morgan here in Ward 1. I am pleased today to be joined by members of my public safety team and our community outreach teams, your council member, Brianne Nadeau. And we're just going to talk a bit here and take some questions and then walk around the neighborhood to talk to neighbors. We know that this neighborhood has been particularly hard hit with burglaries and other crimes in the recent days and weeks. And while we know that violent crime is down since last year, the amount of violent crime remains very unsettling to neighbors. And the amount of property crimes that we have seen is also unacceptable to us. We know that victims of property crime feel violated, they're incredibly inconvenienced, and it leads to feelings of their own personal peace being disrupted. And we take those crimes very seriously as well. So over the past year, we've launched and expanded and we have launched and expanded the number of teams that MPD and DC government at large has to respond to these sort of crime trends. That includes the carjacking task force that Chief Conti, working with federal and regional partners, has deployed, as well as our go teams that we deploy for special events. We've also launched two multi-agency task forces, one that is focused on our nightlife corridors and the other one focused on violent crime. And both of these task forces have achieved positive outcomes. For example, between June and December of last year, we drove down crime in 3 nightlife corridor areas on Connecticut Avenue, U Street, as well as, where's our third one? H Street Northeast. And we saw an overall decrease by 28%. And on H Street, we saw a decrease of 20% in total crime. Now we are able to say today that we can situationally deploy a task force to the Adams Morgan community as well. That's good news. So what that means is, depending on what's going on in the neighborhood and our staff resources, we will be able to deploy in Adams Morgan. We also recently added additional foot patrols in Mount Pleasant, which is also a part of the 3rd District. And I know that the businesses and neighbors have been advocating to me directly about the need for officers to be on foot, not only in Mount Pleasant or in Adams Morgan, but all over the district. So, Chief, we appreciate your attention to that. In addition to the Nightlife Task Force, we have a multi-agency public safety task force which supports MPD's homicide reduction initiative and focuses specifically in parts of our city that have the highest numbers, unfortunately, of gunshots and people killed by guns. The task force recently expanded to the Good Hope Road corridor. We conducted one of these multi-agency walks on the Good Hope Road corridor just a few weeks ago. And the chief and I speak about it weekly. And not just the chief, but our DBH professionals, as well as our bid, about how we can make the Good Hope Road corridor safer and improve the quality of life for neighbors and residents. We are also expanding some of that work to 2 areas along Georgia Avenue. And on Wednesday, I will be leading a public safety walk in those areas on Georgia Avenue. So right now, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Conti, who has been participating in a roundtable that the council held this morning on gun violence. And I'm very, very happy that he is with us today to also hear about the needs in Adams Morgan. Chief.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm Robert J. Conti III, Chief of Police here in the Metropolitan Police Department, and I want to thank the Mayor for her support of the Metropolitan Police Department. Keeping each and every part of our city safe is one of our top priorities. No matter if it is here in Adams Morgan or in the 6th District, we are committed to safeguarding lives and property. MPD is constantly assessing our staffing along with crime trends, utilizing intelligence-led policing to put our resources in the right places. But even with that, there are people out there who continue to cause harm to our communities, and they need to be held accountable. But we can't do it alone. To hold those people accountable, we need the community's help. A great example of community helping us hold people accountable was right here in Adams Morgan. In just the past few weeks, MPD arrested 3 people who were responsible for a total of 25 establishment burglaries, robberies, and destruction of property offenses that occurred between October 17th and February 23rd of 2023, right here in the 18th Street corridor and extended into the 2nd District. Those cases could not have been solved if businesses and residents didn't provide us with security video. With some hard and diligent work by our 3rd District officers and detectives, that video and other information helped develop leads, build a case, and arrest those 3 people responsible for a crime spree here in the Adams Morgan community. The community cooperation is crucial in all aspects of the police department. With good police work, strong evidence, and community participation, you have heard me say this time and time and time again. With those 3 things, we can close any case with good police work, with strong evidence, and community participation. In doing so, we also hold people accountable, and we work to build safer, stronger neighborhoods right here in the District of Columbia. Before we take questions, I just want to say, as I stand here and look around here, I started my policing career as a patrol officer right here in Adams Morgan. I think I shared with the council member, I was in an accident right here at this intersection many years ago. But I look around this vibrant community called Adams Morgan, and it's really the people that make this community great. And law enforcement, amen. In law enforcement, we have always been and will always be a very important part of this community, but we're not the only ones. There's an entire ecosystem within our criminal justice framework, but then there are also folks, I see the Office of Gun Violence Prevention folks standing back here as well. There are also other people who are very, very, very important to ensure that we have the safest neighborhood that we possibly can have. So I want to thank everyone for coming out today, and as the mayor and I are prepared to take any questions that you have, I just really appreciate you being here because, again, everybody here is what makes Adams Morgan the great community that it is. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Councilmember, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Chief. Appreciate you both being out here today. The Mayor mentioned in her remarks that, we still have some work to do when it comes to public safety. And at a recent community meeting with the Calorama Citizens Association, we heard very clearly from the community, from business owners, how this impacts them. And I see today, I look out into this crowd and I see our business leaders, I see our residents. That's the kind of community we are. We come together around these issues. I want to commend MPD for making those 3 arrests and everybody who worked together with them. And the thing about it is, people have a right to be angry. I'm angry. I'm a mom. I got 2 kids. I'm raising them here in the city, and we shouldn't have to be worried about this kind of violence. I'm angry that we still have people out there running around with guns that shouldn't have them. I'm angry about the increase in youth crime because that indicates a failing on many levels of our society. And I'm angry that we still don't have the support we need from our federal partners to get these cases prosecuted and to get harmful people off the street. But I'm going to take that anger, thank you, and I'm going to channel it, and I'm going to work with the mayor and the chief and all these people back here. You know, the chief's having a hard time, even though we have every officer that he and the mayor asked for funded in this budget. We're having a hard time with recruitment, right? So I want us all to take the time, and this is despite the fact that we have the hiring bonus. So I'm planning to work with the mayor and the chief to see how we can do more on recruitment, and ask everybody who's here today to think about who are the best and brightest you know that might be able to help us fill some of those vacancies on the police force. Because when we grow our police force with community members, we know it can be stronger, it can be community driven, it can be accountable, and we need more of that. I want to note a couple upcoming meetings that community members might want to attend, organized by our Adams Morgan bid, hosted by our Line Hotel on March 13th and March 27th. We also have our monthly 3D CAC meeting the last Thursday of the month. Either my or my staff will be at every single one of those upcoming meetings if you need us. And I look forward to, I am going to have to go back to that roundtable that the council's hosting on public safety today. As you can see, this is an issue that's at the forefront of all of our minds in government. But I'm hoping I can get some of the walk in before I go. Thank you so much, Mayor.
Okay. So thank you, council member, and we are very interested in your thoughts on recruiting. But we also know that it's not just about MPD putting out a help wanted poster, is it? We have to ensure that we have a public safety environment in the district that supports our force, supports the numbers of officers that we need, and make sure that we have fair policies, that when you're a young person thinking about which police department to join, you say to yourself, that Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C. is where I want to be and grow my career. And so that's what we are going to lock arms and get to work on. So with that, I want to acknowledge that we've also been joined by the Adams Morgan Bid Executive Director, Kristen Barden. Give Kristen a big round of applause, as well as our DPW Director, Director Spriggs. Where's Director Spriggs? Look at him. Give him a lot of work. We want Adams Morgan to be safe and clean. Salah Kaparzi. Where's Salah? There's Salah. They call him the Nightmare, but I'm the Nightmare. He's the Director of Nightlife. I also want to introduce you to Jennifer Porter. Jennifer is taking on a new role in D.C. government. She's now the Director of the Office of Victim Services and Justice Grants after many years of leading our office on women's policy and initiatives. And finally, Christy Whitfield is behind me. She's our Director of the Department of Small and Local Businesses. So with that, we'll take press questions, and then we'll take questions from the community. Any press questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, Mayor. To the mayor and the chief, one issue came up at a community listening session meeting last week in the DuPont Circle area that the D.C. Attorney General hosted. And the issue that came up from community members was their deep concern and troubling over that in cases where a juvenile is charged by MPD with a crime, including a crime of violence, the case goes into a black hole and no one could ever find out about the disposition because of the confidentiality requirements. So people are asking, and might you and the chief support changing the law if that's needed to allow the outcome of those cases to be known to the community without, of course, disclosing the identity of the juvenile?
I would, and I say that with a lot of caveats because it is a complicated issue. But I agree with the sentiment. The sentiment is, and even that includes among some of the agencies of the government, like DCPS may not necessarily know something that happened at CFSA or something that happened at the Office of the Attorney General. I mean, literally. And so that type of discussion among responsible agencies is definitely needed. Now, you may, from a press perspective, have a different set of interests. But we have our own interests that aren't being served by the confidentiality laws as they are now. Any other questions? Okay.
Mayor, last week Fox 5 reported on a building here that had been broken into at least 6 times, showing the video of that. Previously, there was a business owner of Aurora Market who talked about how he had reached out to the local council member multiple times and that he had been reaching out for help regarding one particular person who kept vandalizing his business. Why is this now coming after those reports? How do you answer the folks who are saying we needed help beforehand, we never got it? Why is this happening now?
Why is what happening?
Expanding the task force to this area.
Well, we're expanding as we have resources. So we can't say that every community can get a nightlife task force. For example, we just simply don't have the officers or the other personnel to dedicate to it. But we have seen a pattern of a property crime where the chief is committed to really focusing on how we can make extra deployments to the area.
Yeah, and then off topic. Do you expect any more arrests for this related to the burglaries in this community? You said 3. I think previous officers have said 3 and 4 are expected.
Yeah, right now we think we have the 3 individuals that were responsible. Obviously, the investigation, because there are so many cases linked to this, it is ongoing. So there could be other information that could be revealed over the course of the investigation. But right now, we feel very confident about the 3 we have in custody.
And then for the nightlife task force, how do you determine between correlation and causation? Like, how confident, is there businesses telling you that this is, how do you make those that leap from there has been a drop in this community and it's not other things like violent crime across the city is going down?
Yeah, so we look across the entire landscape of the city, right? And you look at, when you talk about nightlife areas, our nightlife areas are areas where we certainly have opportunities with the deployment of other resources other than just MPD to give that presence. So we listen to community members. I move in communities all across the city, talk to community members about what's happening in their areas, talk to business leaders about what's happening in communities, and then we make decisions just based on some of those things that we see. I'm thankful that our officers, specifically the 3rd District Crime Suppression Team, in assistance with the detectives of 3D, were able to bring this case to closure, which in large part, those cases were in large part the reason why we're here today. But as we assess and evaluate just what the crime trends are, understand that crime trends change, and we must change our deployment along with those crime trends. So we'll continue to assess, and if we need to make adjustments with personnel, et cetera, we'll do that. But as the mayor mentioned, we have the resource that we have. It's really about trying to make the best utilization of the resource that we have where the issues are in community.
Mayor, some of us just left the chairman's news conference a few minutes ago, and the two big issues there was the crime code. He said he's withdrawn the bill from the Senate if he can, and then the other thing was about the metro buses, and there seems to be some disagreement as to whether there is the funding for it. I'm going to ask about the metro buses first. Is there funding for the council's bill? I understand you did not sign it, but nevertheless, what are your thoughts there?
Well, we're in the budget process, so we are going to be submitting a balanced budget to the council, and the council can make funding for its priorities. So if you're asking me, is there funding, I would say those choices need to be made in this budget process.
So, of course, there seems to be some disagreement between the CFO and the council, but you're not weighing in on this one way or the other, or?
Well, I'm not sure how to answer that question, Sam, other than to say the CFO is the only entity in the district that can estimate and certify revenue.
And your position on free Metro buses, what is it?
We're in the budget process, so we're discussing a lot of priorities after the information that we received on the February revenue estimate, which had our dollars, not this upcoming year, but in the years after that, going down pretty significantly. So as you know, we have a multi-year budgeting process, so we have to make the budget balance on the revenue estimates that we have. I don't get to say how much revenue we have. The council doesn't get to say how much revenue we have. Our law says that the independent CFO says how much revenue we have. So that's why I answered your question about Metro in that way, because that was the estimate that we're working with.
Chief, the city has a lot of violence interruption programs, more than $100 million worth or more. But what is the status of the police force itself? You look at the numbers every day. How many officers do you have as of today? How many do you think you still need?
So as of today, we're at 3,378 officers. Where we were when I first took over, we were at 3,800 police officers. So as you can imagine, that's a significant shortage in terms of the number of officers that we have. But we make no excuses in that space. We still, with the 3,378 that we have, we go out here and we do the best job that we absolutely can. We have the members of the Metropolitan Police Department. I've been very consistent about this. They've worked over 1 million hours of overtime over the course of the last 3 years, which is significant, but it's not sustainable, and it's not something that we want to be proud of and stick our chests out about to say, hey, we're working our officers to death in this space. Ideally, the mayor and I, her question to me is, Chief, what do we need? What do we need? And, people, and I mean, this is just beyond me. Some people have never put a pair of handcuffs on anybody a day in their life want to tell me how many officers we need for the Metropolitan Police Department. But that's another conversation for another time. But what I will say is that in the conversations that the mayor and I have had, I think we first need to get back to 3,800, which will take several years to do, at least probably a decade at the rate we are right now, right? And then we need to look at beyond that. But I think 3,800 is a comfortable number, but I would like to see 4,000 officers in our city. And I say that based upon everything that our police officers are tasked with, in Washington, D.C., and this is one thing that people don't necessarily realize is different from a lot of other places. We are the police department, we are the sheriff's department, we are all of those things here, and we are the state police here in the District of Columbia. Our Metropolitan Police officers are responsible for that. Add to that, there are responsibilities in the federal space. Anytime there are foreign dignitaries, major demonstrations, all of that stuff. So to say that, let's just let the number go down to whatever the lowest number is, and some people try to do that, say, oh, well, crime went down last year. Violent crime was down last year. Well, you talk to community members about that. At the end of the day, when community members reach out and they call for police, they want to see a police officer, and they want to see them in their community like right now. So right now, what I'm doing is moving resources around as best I can with the resources that I have to give communities that presence, using overtime and the other things that we need to do to make community members feel safer.
I'm wondering, okay, so we have another neighborhood task force here. We're expanding the resources we have. Where are those resources coming from? Are you pulling from somewhere else? Are those officers leaving other neighborhoods to come to this neighborhood? And where are we going to see less officers because of this?
Yeah, so the good thing about the task forces that we have here in the 3rd District, U Street is already it's already here in the 3rd District. So it's really kind of building on that. And again, keeping in mind that let's not make this strictly about police officers, right? If police officers are one part of it, but our nightlife task force partners include Department of Public Works, Department of Transportation, Department of Vehicles for Hire, DBH. It's inclusive of all of that. So we want to, again, in an effort to try to really just maximize the government footprint in these various communities, utilize MPD and our other partners to expand and be impactful in communities. We want community members to feel safe, and as a result of that, it's not, again, just about police being in the neighborhood. When the guys from the Office of Gun Violence Prevention or whoever, or CSOSA are walking around in communities, all of those things together, I believe, contribute to making communities feel much safer than what they are.
Mayor Bowser, if we could go back to the crime bill.
Yeah.
I guess you know now that the chair sent a letter to the president of the Senate withdrawing the crime bill. Both Democratic and Republican Senate leadership have said the vote's going to go forward regardless of what Chairman Mendelson has done. My question first, did Chairman Mendelson consult with you about this maneuver before he did it? Did he alert you to it before he did it? And just what are your thoughts about, you know, he also won't give a timeline on what happens next, but he says nothing's going to happen fast. This is going to take time before we get another crime bill before Congress.
Well, I would agree with the chairman's kind of sentiment that it's best for everybody if the vote doesn't take place. I'm not sure. It sounds like some members of the Senate have spoken up. I'm not sure that that's procedurally possible.
Did he consult with you, or?
I've had a lot of conversations, Mark, about this, so I'm not sure exactly.
Seems like withdrawing the bill, the first time in the history of the District of Columbia, is something you would remember chatting with the chairman about.
As I said, we chatted, I'm pretty sure, about the broad goal that there wouldn't be a vote, and exploring every means possible to get to that end.
And then, Chief, if I could ask you just two quick off-topic questions. Can you update us on the investigation into the Connecticut Avenue fatal? Have you determined any possible cause? We see there are speed limit signs that have gone up there now as kind of, I guess, a traffic slowing, calming device. What can you tell us about that investigation?
Yeah, so the investigation is still ongoing. As you know, unfortunately, one life was lost in that case, Mark. The vehicle involved that crossed over the lines was a Tesla. We know that the vehicle was not operating on its own. So we're still in the investigation phase of this very tragic accident where a lot of people were hurt. But right now, it doesn't appear that the vehicle was on any kind of autopilot mode or anything.
The Tesla, do you know, was it headed northbound and one of the cars was headed southbound? And
yes.
Do you think that was because there was a lane change sign or some kind of confusion over that?
I don't know. I mean, I could speculate all day long, but I don't know for certain. And we're hopeful that as we go through the investigation, continue to talk to the people who were in the car. As you know, they had some pretty significant injuries, about what was happening in the car before that. Hopefully we'll get to that answer, but I don't have it right now.
And then just an update on the officers who were placed on leave, and I think the USAO is looking into the officers who were confiscating guns but not making charges. Can you update us on that? Do you expect there to be any kind of criminal charges resulting from this? What is the status of those officers?
Well, the officers are still in the same status. Some of those officers were put in a non-contact status. Some of those officers were placed on administrative leave. But the U.S. Attorney's Office will ultimately be the final determining factor. As you know, their process is independent of everything that we do here on the MPD side. So we have supplied them with the information that we have. They will assess and then ultimately make a decision about what are next steps going forward.
One
Hello.
second, let me get the press questions. There's some order.
Mayor Bowser,
Yes.
Mario Vizcarra from WUSA 9. This is a question for Eric Flack, my reporter. Last week, Channel 9 reported you had a phone call with NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, in which the commissioner expressed the league's desire to keep the RFK site in play for the new Washington Commanders Stadium. Can you tell us anything about it? And one more thing, will you accept the league's help convincing Congress to give DC the right to build a new stadium on the RFK side?
My position on the RFK Stadium is well known. I believe, first and foremost, that the district has to get control of over 100 acres of land in the District of Columbia. And on that 100 acres, a multiple of uses can happen, including a $60 million indoor facility that I have funded with the council that brings DPR on par with every jurisdiction around it in terms of indoor track and swimming, possibly ice. So all of those things can happen, but it all starts with us getting control of the land. So we're going to work with everybody who is interested in the district having control of its land without, mind you, a self-imposed rider. And what I mean by that is we're not going to tell the Congress to tell us what we can't or what we can use the land for. That in order to make the type of investments in infrastructure that's needed for housing, commercial development, better park space and recreation, we really do need to go into it like we did at the Wharf or like we did at Walter Reed and let the district develop it.
Mayor Bowser, on the RCCA announcement this morning, Chairman Mendelson was asked a few questions on who bears responsibility for the criminal overhaul getting to where it is today. He was also asked if you bear any responsibility for that. Now, he said he didn't want to point fingers here, but he did note multiple times that a member from your office that was supposed to be part of the advisory committee did not participate. Can you respond to that, please?
I think that the chairman knows well, and I'm also not going to get into a back and forth because I think what the people here want us to do is focus on fighting crime and making sure that we have policies in place that make it better to hire police officers, get to 4,000. Get police back in our schools. Make sure that the prosecutors and judges are fully open and that we're supporting them in every way possible. That's what makes the district safer. So let me just be clear. I have made clear how I felt about the update to the criminal code. The bill also included two superfluous, and I've repeated this many times, policies that did not have the proper hearing or vote in the council, in my opinion. One of them was to allow dangerous murderers and rapists get out of jail early. Now, you can support that policy. I don't have a problem with that. We have one for people going up to the age of 24. You can support it, but don't cram it into a bill. That was opposed by many people, including me. We also had something that was opposed by both of our chief judges to make all misdemeanor trials jury demandable, already at a time where we have too few judges and too few juries. People participating on juries, you guys. Those things are wrong. And so I believe that there are ways to affix that bill. I advanced my recommendations to the council. I spoke to the council ad nauseum about my objections. Now, I've been mayor for 8 years. I have only vetoed 7 bills in that period of time. I don't do it willy-nilly. I do it as my charter responsibility to tell the people of the District of Columbia and the Council of the District of Columbia what I need to run this city and above all to keep it safe. So this is our legislative process. As long as we live under limited home rule, and you know how hard I fought for us to become the 51st state, this is the process. The council makes laws. I can veto or sign them, but it doesn't end there. It goes to the Congress and to the president. And so we all have to recognize the context that we're working in and be smart about it. This is the thing that I know. I've worked with Congresses that are Republican and Democrat, presidents that are Republican and Democrat. The district has waded through these waters before. We're doing it now, and we will work together to make sure the city has what it needs.
Anything differently? Would you have contested or raised your concerns a little bit sooner if you could go back?
I raised my concerns in the legislative process, and that's the position as mayor that I'm in. I probably would have insisted that we had a voting member of that commission that you all keep talking about. And if you go back and look at the records from that commission, you will see that there was a real slant on it. And I call it kind of the how should I say this? There is a philosophy that's developing in the district that you have to be all for, you're not for looking at victims of crime, but only looking at perpetrators of crime. Now, I'll be the first to say that there are problems in the criminal justice system that are biased towards people of color. I'll be the first to say that. But the way to correct it is not to say to people that have committed violent rapes that you can get out of jail. I'm sorry. And not and have the law say that those crimes and those victims can't be taken into account. I just don't believe that. And so that is the point that I have argued. Those are the points that I will continue to argue. And the chief and I and people who know about gun use know that you have to stop people with guns at the very earliest part, and you shouldn't be rolling back sentences for people who use guns in our city. And I just believe that very strongly. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser, and I'm hoping that Chief Conti can address this question as well. With homicides up 30% so far this year, what do you plan to do specifically to address that trend, and do you expect that will weigh on the council or change the approach to criminal code reform going forward?
I appreciate the question. So while you're talking about the homicide trend, let's really put it in perspective. Okay, so last year we ended the year with a reduction in homicides. And as you will hear me oftentimes say, one is one too many in any community. Right now we've seen a slight uptick at the very beginning of the year. We're in the month of March. We got a whole lot of months and days left between now and the end of the year. The things that we have been doing is locking up bad guys, taking guns off the street. What we got to do, if we really want to see homicides go down, is keep bad guys with guns in jail, because when they're in jail, they can't be in community shooting people. So when people talk about what we're going to do different or what we should do different, what we need to do different, that's the thing that we need to do different. We need to keep violent people in jail. Right now, the average homicide suspect has been arrested 11 times prior to them committing a homicide. That is a problem. That is a problem. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, the other thing that also is very problematic, which tells you that this goes beyond just the police, is that the average homicide victim, the average, also has been arrested 10 or 11 times prior to them becoming a homicide victim. That is a problem. But that is not something that is only going to be fixed by the Metropolitan Police Department making arrests, which is where all of the other partners and community members really kind of stepping up to the plate and talking about what's important to the people in this city. I have been saying it, and I will keep on saying it. The best way to keep homicides, one of the best ways to keep homicides from happening in our city is to, as the mayor will say, solve cases. That's important. We want to keep bad guys off the street and keep them from getting guns in their hands. If we can do those things, we'll see a reduction in homicides in the city. Thank you.
So let me say this as well, because the chief emphasized a point that I think bears repeating. Because the thing that I know about dealing with community and government and crime all of these years with the great Metropolitan Police Department is that when we throw all the resources that we have at this issue, we drive down crime. And we're going to drive it down this time too. At the start of last year, we were in a real tough spot with shootings and homicides. By the end of the year, we were down 7%. We start this year in a tough spot with shooting and homicides, but I assure you that we're going to use all the resources at our disposal. We're going to continue to ask the community for your help, and we're going to drive this crime down as well. We will continue to have some ideas. I plan to work with my team on advancing a set of policy proposals that we think that we need the council to take urgent consideration at. I hope to be able to do that in the next 30 days to make sure, as I mentioned earlier about hiring, that we have a public safety environment where people who are considering law enforcement think that DC is a great place to work. They don't think that right now. And so we need to make sure that we're working on all of those issues along with even some of the things that were raised in the first question. We've heard from our principals, we've heard from other people who work with children that we need more information about what's going on with our kids so we can serve them better. So that's something for us to consider as well. So I'm going to be able to take a couple of community questions, and then we're going to get started on our walk. Yes. Peace and love.
Do you support reparations for kidnapped, brutally enslaved Africans?
Well, I certainly think I've spent my time in office trying to right wrongs, especially systematic racism and systematic systems that have kept African Americans in our city from getting ahead. We're very focused right now on black home ownership that we think takes that on directly. Last year, I created a $10 million fund, for example, that is really aimed at the redlining and the mortgage policies that kept African Americans from being able to buy homes. And that is helping us attack the black wealth gap. Part of our comeback plan is really focused on black Washingtonians, that black homeowners fund, and raising the wealth of black families in D.C. So we'll be announcing a lot of policies that are focused on that. You're welcome. Yes.
Hello, thank you. Mayor Bowser, this is for you, and also Chief Conti, if you would like to weigh in. President Biden, through talking about the crime bill, has helped put D.C.'s issue with public safety front and center, and members of Congress, among others, have used that to paint D.C. as especially dangerous for residents and for visitors, even compared to other cities across the country. Do you think that perception of D.C. is accurate?
I think that we regard public safety as our number one issue to make sure that every neighborhood that you're in, you're safe and you feel safe. I feel very safe all over Washington, D.C. Most people feel very safe all over Washington, D.C., but I am troubled by the number of guns, the use of guns, and I am troubled by concerns I have about consequences for using guns. And that is what we're focused on. It's not the job of Republicans in Congress to talk about how great Washington, D.C. is. That's our job. And when I talk about how great Washington, D.C. is, I can do it with the full confidence that no matter where you live, work, or where you're visiting, that we are doing all that we can to make sure we have a safe city.
So what would you say then to somebody considering visiting D.C. but worried because of what's in the news that it's actually not safe here?
Well, I talk about visiting D.C. all the time, and what people are typically talking to us about are the free museums they can visit. They're talking about the great hotels, the great nightlife scene. They're also talking about getting off of the mall and into great neighborhoods like Adams Morgan, where they can truly experience D.C. They also love D.C. Metro. But they do want to make sure that when they come, that there are officers there, or that there are people who work for our bids. And I see the Adams Morgan bid team here in blue, that they can get information and advice on where to go. What we've seen in the last year post-COVID is that our tourists are coming back. Our school kids are coming back. What we're finding out about even our upcoming cherry blossom season, peak bloom March 22nd through 25th, is that the number of people staying in our hotels is on trend to surpass, to be better than it was since COVID. So we feel pretty good about where we are with tourism. We're still down with the international visitor, but we know that still has to do with some of the policies in other places in the world.
What would you say to this idea that D.C. is more dangerous than other cities?
I travel to cities and talk to chiefs of police all across the country. That's just emphatically not true.
Yes. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Please.
4.
The mayor.
Go ahead.
Who's?
Right here in this jacket right here, sir. No, right here in the red jacket.
Oh.
Okay. Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
I'm really glad you're here. I am one of the co-facilitators of Adams Morgan for Reasonable Development, which is in partnership with the KCA, the Colorama Citizens Association,
Okay.
that held the crime forum a few weeks ago here. And we've been in litigation with that bank across the street, and that eyesore has been in place now for a year. If you look carefully, there's the face of a gentleman named Miguel Gonzalez who perished 8 days in the cold after that plaza was closed off. A lot of people here, the community is divided. A lot of people here feel like something needs to happen. All of us felt like something needs to happen. That is the heart of our community, and it's an eyesore. And the bank that owns it, which is this bank right here, Truist, has blighted it for over a decade now. Let the concrete go bad, like avoided having community programming on it. So 2 things I'm asking if you or your administration can do. One is revoke the permits. The Court of Appeals was very clear, rejecting their case and sending it back. Revoke the permit that DDOT issued to put those fences up. And 2, buy the building and buy the space. It's going to cost us $8 to $10 million perhaps to rehab that space and turn it into what this community needs. Because what's remarkable about Adams Morgan is that we don't believe as much in bad guys. People become bad guys when they don't get what they need. And we've been putting mutual aid on that corner. We've been putting people's needs and making sure they're trying to get met on that corner for a long time. And we'd like to continue doing it. So will you revoke those permits for those fences, and will you buy that building?
I'm not prepared to say either right now, but I'm happy to have that conversation. Yes. Who was second?
I was. I want to thank you for vetoing that ridiculous bill. As someone who has lived in this neighborhood for 40-some years, I have never felt unsafe until my building was broken into every night, over and over and over again. And it is the residents of the building, you'll excuse me, officer, but not the police, who ended up taking pictures, identifying the person. And just Friday, I went online to follow this case in district court, and the judge was about to let him out. He has 40-some arrests going back years and years and years in D.C., and he terrorized us. I couldn't take the trash down at night because he wandered the hall.
Yes, ma'am.
So I need
What's the
to
status
tell you,
in the court now?
he got sentenced at least till the end of the year because I went online. His name is Nix.
All right, we're gonna follow up on it to see where it is.
But what I'm saying is, I never thought I would be someone who wanted the Congress to have anything to do with D.C. government. But as long as our ridiculous council people, and I say that, are not paying attention to what the neighborhoods are saying, as long as you get hundreds of people out at the church 2 weeks ago saying we cannot live safely in the neighborhood we've always lived in, then something has to change.
Well, thank you, ma'am, for your comments. And what you said, we never want the Congress to interfere. I want to be clear about where I am. But I do think I need your help as some of these bills are making their way through. I was asked the question, should I have gotten involved? Well, I'm involved in the legislative process when the council has hearings, when they have markups, when they have 2 votes on the bill, and then a third vote to override my veto. We need the community to speak up to them so that they too have consequences for not listening to you. All right, number 3. No, here, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be quick. Just a question about the recent arrests. There had been rumors that there were gangs from out of town involved in burglaries. Were they all local people? Is that rumor wrong?
The commander is here from the 3rd district. These were all local people. There were no out-of-town gangs or anything. People who kind of wander around the community on a regular.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Really quick, Chief and Mayor, Dante Cunningham from the Line Hotel Security Director. What's your message to other businesses that believe that giving over security footage or actually helping is like, you know, I deal with it all the time. A lot of your 3D officers come to me because our hotel is pretty big, and we are able to give the footage, we're able to work with them, we're able to close a lot of cases. But you do have business owners that are also not helping them. I meet a lot of officers, you know, on the beat, a lot of detectives that are also giving the message of, we went here, we didn't get that information, it doesn't help. We're talking about reducing the crime in this area, Adams Morgan. You know, we are one of the largest employers in the area. I want my staff to feel safe. all 200 of them, but I also want our out-of-town guests, our local guests that come in, I also want them to feel safe, but our business partners are not helping. Can you just give a clear, direct message, what your message is to those people that are not helping us keep this community safe?
So I'll say two things. First one, I've said a lot in community, and I'll say it again here. People respond differently depending on their proximity to pain. So when that thing happens in your community, if it happens in front of your doorstep, if it happens at your hotel or your business, you feel differently versus it happening someplace else. So first and foremost, we got to keep that in mind. The second thing that I would say is that public safety is not a spectator sport. And really, the reason why we were able to close those 25 cases is because of the help of community providing that video. The mayor has talked ad nauseum about the rebate program. Residents can get access to it. Businesses can get access to it. We close homicides as a result of video. We close shootings. We close property crimes. And we get to the truth a lot of times with respect to what we find in video. So to the extent that community members or business owners have video, I plead with you. That information should be shared with law enforcement. It benefits everybody. It benefits everybody in this community, your customers, whether you're a resident or whatever. It benefits everybody to be part of that process. So thank you for raising that, sir, from your hotel, and I appreciate what you guys have been doing. Thank you so much.
Partnership with the bid as well.
Last question.
Oh, please.
Hi, my name's Vic Miller. I've lived here almost 50 years. I have two very quick questions. First, when we first moved in, the 3rd District was a lot smaller than it is now. About 20 years ago or so, they pushed out our eastern boundary past Washington Hospital Center to East Capitol and pushed us north to include Mount Pleasant. Well, those guys, we were told, have more crime than we do. So that's a sucking sound of police coverage that we don't get. And I'm wondering if anyone in the police or the council might consider a close look at the boundaries of the districts.
So the boundaries, every 10 years or so, we take a look at the boundaries. We'll be doing that. And one of the things that we do, we look at crime, we look at calls for service, we look at personnel, because if you notice, like in the district, for example, I mean, you could have a population increase in a specific area that contributes to more calls for service, so we have to then shift resources to go to those communities. So we're right about that time where it's time for us to review redrawing boundaries for PSAs and all that kind of stuff.
Thank you. One more quick question.
Yes,
does the nightlife task force include coverage of the streets leading into the nightlife? Because we are part of that system.
Yeah, so they cover the area. You'll probably see them more concentrated, like where the businesses are, but the police officers and the other folks, you know, we don't want everybody huddled up on 18th Street or everybody huddled up on Columbia Road, right? It's really kind of watching where people are coming in, the access and egress points and that kind of thing, really focusing in there, sir. So a very valid question, and it is something that we take in consideration. Yes, sir.
All right, that's this young lady.
Please, I've been longing. Thank you.
All right,
thank
then we
you.
have to get walking.
Thank you, Mayor. I live in this area, and I think it's a great area. The diversity in this city reminds me of so much I've seen on the West Coast. Every ethnic group, you know, you just love it, you know, to see every different type of person on the streets. And the thing is that you talk about nightlife here, but no one ever concerns themselves with how frightened seniors are here. We are seniors. I'm 72 years old, and already because of COVID-19, we've had all kinds of activities come into our senior homes. I don't know if it's specifically this neighborhood or others around, which I'm sure it's a trend. But what they're doing is they're going into senior homes. We don't have management and property managers that will protect us. We've got cameras everywhere, but they keep saying that the housing authority, because we live in a neighborhood where we have fixed income, where we can afford to live here and enjoy our lives. But we can't when we're constantly scared. We've got prostitution.
Okay, ma'am, let me get some additional information from you. Let me get some different so we can figure out what's going on in your building. Okay?
Sarah Circle.
Sarah Circle. Got it. All right. We're going to get moving. If you're walking with us, I'll answer some questions on the way. Thank you, everybody.